Good morning, Pastor Ron Jetter, Immanuel Lutheran Church. It is Thursday, the 30th and final day of the month of April. Wow, where is the time going? This is the 19th day since Easter, but I was on a call this morning with our bishop's office and some colleagues, and one of them reminded us this is the 40th day since the Washington State stay-at-home order began on March 23rd. He added that it was after 40 days in the wilderness that Jesus was then tempted. It wasn't during, it was day 41. The temptation started to come in. And boy, are we sure hearing about people getting restless. And not surprising. We've been doing this new thing. This is, I don't know how many, 3 weeks now that I've been doing daily messages, and March 15th was the last time the congregation met in the building at 300 South Euclid Street, Grandview, Washington. That following Wednesday, I did a Zoom or recorded video for our Wednesday evening for the first time, and figured out the YouTube. The following Sunday, 5 of us met at the church on the 22nd of March in order to try to do a live Zoom, and the internet signal wasn't good enough, so I ended up moving from the sanctuary out to the narthex while the musicians stayed in the sanctuary, and with their phones were trying to piece it together, and we realized it just wasn't going to work. And we've spent the last several weeks then, the musicians, Andrea and Sue and Joan and others, and Lois, helping to figure out how to get a full worship, as full as we possibly can, while still being socially quarantined. The word quarentus, incidentally, means 40. So the word quarantine itself automatically refers to 40 days of isolation. 40 days Jesus was isolated in the wilderness, off by himself. Wow. Now we know how he feels. Kind of. I don't think we really do, because he was in a desert, a wilderness, had to scrounge for his food, for whatever he ate, a little bit of water. He didn't have Zoom. We have so much to still be thankful for. So much. I've been looking at the Gospel of John all week, except for yesterday when we did our Bible study on Ruth, and again, 4 p.m. every Wednesday, live Bible study on Zoom. But today I want to look at the burial of Jesus, because we go through it very, very quickly. Good Friday is about the crucifixion, not about the burial. But John's Gospel is the one that provides a lot of details about the burial of Jesus. Chapter 19, verse 38. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who had earlier visited Jesus by night. So we remember Nicodemus is one of the leaders of the Jews, and obviously so is Joseph of Arimathea, because you can't be a nobody and say, I would like to go speak with the governor and request a favor of the governor, the Roman governor, the overseer. Obviously, then he was known to the governor, and the governor respected and received him and allowed him then to take the body of the one who had been crucified, the criminal Jesus Christ, or Jesus of Nazareth. And Nicodemus is there too. Nicodemus was the one who met Jesus by night, clear back in chapter 2, and started this whole discussion in John about two realities, the reality of above and the reality of below, the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of earth, the eternal and the temporal. We're going to continue here in verse 39. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. One of the other Gospels tells us that it was Joseph's tomb of his family, where he himself would have been one day laid to rest. Well, we curiously hear that the women were thinking that they needed to go Sunday morning, their first opportunity, to anoint and wrap the body of Jesus, that was their purpose for going to the tomb. Here in John's Gospel, and all alone in John's Gospel, not in the others, we find out the body of Jesus has already been prepared for burial, for permanent burial. 75 pounds of myrrh and aloes. Remember that Jesus' feet were anointed with myrrh. And it's very expensive. So I'm thinking that, okay, a pound of myrrh and 74 pounds of aloe. Aloe, however, is kind of hard to get these days because people are making their own hand sanitizer. Back then, it was probably fairly plentiful. But still, spices and aloe and myrrh and linen, expensive cloth. So to wrap the body for burial then. That was, as it says, their custom. Only in John do we get these details. Burial customs are unique to different cultures. Going around the world, we find so many different things. I have to say that the burial customs of the modern-day United States are in some ways the most unnatural. The idea of filling a body with chemicals, replacing the natural fluids with preservative, and then placing the body that has been well decorated, makeup, nice clothes, into a sealed, lined, padded steel box, and then put inside of a 6-inch thick concrete vault and put into the ground, just seems foreign to me. Partly because I was raised with a grandmother who says, I want to be cremated. I want my elements to return to the earth as quickly as possible. My parents were cremated. Their elements were returned to the earth. I scattered them myself at their cabin, which is now my cabin in Idaho. Sue's mother, I'm going to have a box, I'm going to have a piece of ground, I'm going to have a monument. And it's there in Boise, up on a hill in a place called Dry Creek Cemetery. She wanted her place. It's next to her husband, and her husband's sister, who was widowed very early into her marriage, is buried there with them also. And it's a place where we can go when we're in Boise, where Sue and I can go and she can put flowers. It's important to have a place to go. I agree. I think probably the Jewish burial would be fine. The body would still be allowed to decompose naturally along with the spices. The idea of a steel box in concrete so that the body is going to be basically untouched by anything natural for the next several centuries seems unnatural to me personally. But it's different for each of us. Today, though, in John's Gospel, we hear a little bit about the Jewish burial custom. Jews, incidentally, cannot be embalmed. They must be buried within 24 hours, unless, of course, there are legal reasons why an autopsy has to be done. But Jewish law to this day requires that body to be buried in as close to natural state as possible. Not in a vault, in something that will decay. A wooden coffin, unembalmed. Dressed simply. We came into the world with nothing. We will leave it with nothing. I like that. How about you? Have you thought about that? Of course you have. You've probably got your plans. Someday, though, it'd be interesting to get around a group and talk. What are your plans? What are your thoughts? What do you think about burial or cremation? Or perhaps the burial of the Viking kings, your body on top of a pile of wood soaked in oil on top of a boat, and then put out to sea with people with flaming arrows. Well, we're not Viking kings. Who can afford that? Besides, pollution, I don't think we'd be allowed to do that. I don't even think Viking kings are allowed that anymore. Well, that's the word for today. I'll see you tomorrow.